Welcome back, everyone. Thank you for tuning in to another Strong Women series. I'm so excited to have Stephanie Picon-Arroyo with us. And I was going to do a whole introduction of her, but she started speaking and it was so beautiful. So I'm actually going to let her introduce herself. So Stephanie, just describe yourself for us. How would you describe yourself to people?
First, I just wanted to say thank you, Maxine, for giving me an opportunity to engage with you. As I think about how I would describe myself, I am a person who acknowledges that I carry more than one kind of role and one title. And so I think first and foremost, I would acknowledge that I'm a daughter, daughter to an amazing king. I am the daughter of an amazing, strong Latina and sister to one of seven, a mom to an amazing little boy. And then, of course, my profession, I'm a nurse by practice.
Awesome. Thank you so much. See, she said it so much better than I would have said it. Stephanie, how are you? How have you been?
I've been well in this, very kind of unique time that we're in. It's a different season for sure, but I've been well and really trying to be cognizant of those moments where I'm not feeling so great and trying to just, I think by design and through my experiences, and you'll hear it as we talk a little bit, you have to adapt sometimes in circumstances that are unexpected. And so you may allow yourself room to step into those feelings of not feeling well, and whatever that might look like or feel like, and then acknowledging it, but not staying in it long enough where it starts to be what defines your day in and day out.
Yeah, for sure. I think I can totally relate to that too, because you get into your moments, we are definitely in heavy times between COVID and the revolution. It's really a revolution that we're sitting in the middle of right now. And so it is, I think we definitely have to take care of our heart and our emotions and feelings. And I totally can relate to that. So Stephanie and I we met at Northeastern. So we went to college together, but she was a couple years ahead of me. So we're trying to figure out, did we actually know each other? Did we be whatever? And so I think that there were maybe some events that we might have crossed over. And then we have some common friends. Actually, my best friend, Gabby, is probably who connected us. And so really interesting kind of story. So Stephanie was part of SWAG, right from the beginning, I think, first day. For those of you who don't know, SWAG has been around actually for about 5 or 6 years. It's just that we recently started doing these videos. And she was there, and I remember she was always commenting, always posting, super engaged. And I went through a bit of a rough season at one point and took a step back and kind of just dropped SWAG on her lap and was like, hey, can you take care of this? Thanks, bye. And didn't even wait for the answer. Just got off of Facebook. So I'm really thankful to you that you are not judging me for doing that.
Not at all. And I'm excited again that it's picked up in the time that it has. I think, again, things ebb and flow for different reasons. And so the second that I saw you kind of picking up and using this platform the way that you are, and I've said it to you and I'll say it to you again on this format, I think it's amazing that you're using your voice in this means and lifting up other voices of women, strong women of God. So.
Yeah. Well, thank you. Thank you for being part of that and for being one of those voices. I love starting off with learning about people's names. So tell me a little bit about yours. Do you like it? Do you love it?
So for a long time, being a kid who, was part of the 80s, Stephanie was a name that was common. I felt like I didn't want that commonality. And I also felt like I think I've always been kind of ahead of my time. So I felt like it was a little immature. And then one day my mom shared with me why she chose that name. Because even as a Latina, I just was like, why not Estefania? What was it? Why did you spell this way? Kind of what? And so she shares with me that when she was growing up, she used to watch a soap opera. There's something about names, right? And the lead actress. Her name in the soap opera was Stephanie, or Estefania. She was strong-willed. She was like a warrior in her role in that soap opera. And so I think it's funny now, and I look back at that, and even in that simplicity of, you know, what her kind of thought was, I think it resonates very much so with kind of who I am. I'm very strong-willed, and while, you know, I may not perceivably be a warrior in the eyes of other people, I think I have those warrior instincts in different aspects of my life. And
awesome. Well, Stephanie, tell me a little bit about your journey with God. I actually don't know anything about it. So share with us whatever you feel comfortable.
At the age of 5, my mom kind of decided to take up the invitation of individuals in our community who were inviting her to church. And so my mom is a New Yorican, like, you know, fluent in English and Spanish, and very street smart, very, very street smart. And so we transitioned from New York City to Massachusetts when I was younger than 5, actually, but around age 5, for the transitions that we had encountered, life seemingly was kind of really settling down for us. And so she, I think, was in a place where she was, you know, I think God was positioning her to be sensitive to that voice and that invitation. And so at the kind of, that's my first kind of memory that I have of church life and being part of a spiritual community. So pretty early on, you would say, since, you know, my first formative memories that I have from those experiences was exactly that, being in church and Pentecostal, so definitely a way of worship and congregating and learning about the Word of God. And so I would say around the age of about 15, I was convinced at that early age that I wanted to kind of continue my walk. And so was under the leadership of kind of a different spiritual family at that time, and just learned and adapted and grew. And before I knew it, I was graduating high school, and my sights were set on more, and I left to college. And in that transition, I also had a transition back to my original spiritual family, kind of that, the roots of where I started congregating at the age of 5. And so I will say that I think God was very intentional at different points of my formative, you know, opinions about what my life looked like spiritually and who was leading me at that time. Kind of what I grew up in as a child and the experiences that I had, you know, really anchored me. And then in my teens, during a time where the words that society was even speaking into a young woman's life growing up, you know, in a single family household, coming from the experiences my mom had come from, that I had encountered as a child and then as a teenager. And so I don't think the expectations were very high, right? Not that my mom didn't have high expectations, she had them. And she trusted the educational system and the systems around me to make sure that I was going to achieve those things. But the system didn't necessarily have those expectations, right? And so in my teen years, I stepped away from the spiritual family that I had known for different reasons, partly because my mom had kind of taken a step back. And so then I was like, you know, where am I? What do I do? And at some point I decided I'm going to step up again. I maintained in that for several years, and like I said, I was determined to finish high school, and I remember again kind of stepping back and taking some time apart, and then I returned to my spiritual family, who I'm still a part of to this day. I set forth and left to college, and during kind of the initial year or two, I struggled because I was really looking for a place, because home was literally Brockton, right? So it was like 30 minutes, but I was a nursing major. And so there wasn't a lot of time to be like, I'm gonna take a drive back to Brockton. And in a Pentecostal church, they always had the saying, there's a time to come in, but not a time to leave. And I'm like, I'm a college student. I need a time to go, you know, in, and I need a time to get out. And I needed something that was proximal. I think in that stage of my life, God was very present, but it really became a relationship in just between He and I. And when I would go home for breaks, of course I would go to my church, and there was constant kind of pressure of what my life should look like as a daughter in Christ, and then also the culture kind of mixes in, being in a Pentecostal church, primarily Spanish speaking, and what my experience was looking like at Northeastern, right? Like, I left my mother's home, I wasn't married, I went to college, I was living on campus, and it's like all of the things that potentially I was going to be engaging in, and potentially putting myself in harm's way. So it really became a time where I had to recognize and say, like, no, I'm capable of making good choices. I've done them till now, and I've made mistakes, and I'm thankful to God that in those mistakes, they weren't mistakes that necessarily marked me in such a way that I didn't have an opportunity to kind of step out of, right? Because there are some experiences that mark you and you carry that in an external way for a long time. Thankful that even in the mistakes and the choices that I made, I constantly had that reminder. Some people call it their conscience. I call it the Holy Spirit of God that says, hey, wait a minute, that may not be a good thing, right? Or is this really who I've called you to be? Or is this really reflective of who you say you are? And so that was an interesting experience being at Northeastern, and on campus, at least, I didn't find, or maybe I wasn't looking, I don't know, maybe it wasn't for me, experiences that anchored me in that, but it was always there, it was consistent. It was just sometimes shared in isolation with another person, a young person who was saying, hey man, like, I know exactly what you're talking about, like, I'm the son of a pastor, I should not be on campus, I should not be here right now, and socializing in the context of what we were. But I think that also gave room for consciousness. It gave room to say, like, I'm going to enjoy these experiences, but I'm not necessarily conforming to everything that everyone's doing in this experience. And so there was some of that. Where I'm at presently, in a place of reflection. Like I said, there are moments where, just physically you're well and you're feeling like, I'm going to conquer the things that are in front of me. And there are moments that you feel differently, and whether it's right or not, I think spiritually I have moments like that, and not because the spirit ebbs and flows. The spirit is constant, and God is constant. So I don't want to by any means make it seem like that's not the case. That is true. I'm clear of that. But there are moments that I need to be very intentional, and I need to be I need reminders, like a sign that tells me that I'm blessed, not because I don't think that I am, but because sometimes there's so much distraction, there's so much that happens in our day-to-day. And I may not just be there yet in my spiritual walk, and I need that reminder. I need that kind of check and balance. I woke up the other morning and I was like, I don't want to go downstairs and sit in front of my computer again, for my work day. And immediately it was like, but, be thankful that you have that opportunity, that you have that option, especially in the times that we're in, right? And so it's that constant, like, yes, and then it's like, how am I going to start this day? How am I going to go about and be intentional with you, God? And so I was very excited when I saw your series on journaling, and I started this just before the new year in 2020, my journal. And so that's another way where I told myself I'm going to be intentional in my pursuit of God. I'm going to be intentional in this relationship building, not knowing the times that we're literally knocking at our doors, where we've not been able to fellowship in person, right, with our spiritual families, and recognizing even before this that a time like this would come, that at some point we as children of God are in a place, not just now, but really to be strong in this walk, you have to be self-sufficient. And what I mean by that is not independent from God, but independent sometimes from the construct of the church. And yet I know that God calls us to fellowship and the importance of that. I know that. I've experienced it. But in a time like this, to really sit there and say like, oh, today's not the day that I get to go and sit down and Bible study with my brothers and sisters. And so I have to do it, right? I have to be hungry and I have to be in that pursuit. And so that's kind of where I'm at right now. Like I have to push just as hard as I would want my pastor to push me, or I have to pray just as strongly as I would expect for someone to intercede for me in prayer. I have to study just as hard as I would like for someone to potentially educate me and guide me. So
yeah. Stephanie, I love what you're saying, because I think, I mean, and this is certainly not the case for everyone, but I definitely do think that there is a large portion of American Christianity that is very dependent on being kind of spoon-fed. And so, you know, we do check off the list of, I showed up to church on Sunday, I'm good. Okay, yes, I heard the sermon, it was great. I took this one point into consideration, maybe. It's almost like I attend church as opposed to I am the church.
yeah.
And I think that you're absolutely right. This season is, I think, more than ever highlighting the fact that we are the church. And that doesn't mean that, you know, the church building itself is not something important. I mean, I love gathering together. I love the fellowship there. But to remind myself that Monday through Saturday, I still have to be intentional with my relationship. Not I have to, I get to be intentional with this relationship with the creator of the universe, with Jesus. Like, how incredible is that? And so in the same way that you spend time with the person you're pursuing, right? You're in a relationship, it's new, it's fresh or whatever. Or if you've been married for so many years, you still have to put in work every day to continue to be intentional, to continue to get to know someone. And it's the same thing with our relationship with God. It's another relationship. A good challenge is like, how much time are you spending on that relationship with God? If this were a relationship with a boyfriend or your husband or with whatever, would that relationship survive? And that's kind of how I look at my days. Am I spending enough time with God throughout the week? Am I finding those moments, you know? So I love what you've said. Thank you for sharing that. So Stephanie, talk to me a little bit about what you're passionate about, what you feel like your mission is, and how does it look specifically in your life?
So I spoke a little bit about kind of what my teenage years looked like. And I think early on, my mom describes that I was, you know, a kid who really enjoyed like playing doctor and, you know, checking up and kind of caring and nurturing in that sense. And so early on, I think I knew I wanted to help people, right? In that kind of simple kind of way of understanding now where I'm at. And then eventually that evolved into something very specific. And I knew that I wanted to go in healthcare, and I understood that I wanted to help to bring care to people in kind of vulnerable situations. And I can put that language now, but then it was recognizing like poverty and recognizing stories of people who were disenfranchised. And again, I didn't have the terminology then, but I knew there was more. And then I remember probably around my sophomore year in high school, so I kind of knew that already, but I wasn't really sure how that was going to look for me. Around 16, I decided to join a program that was called Reach. And I remember in one of the kind of first meetings that I went to, confronted by the fact that statistically, like, I wasn't supposed to achieve, right? Like I was supposed to potentially fall into, you know, one of those marginalized groups, you know, not finish high school, potentially be another teen pregnancy. And that created a little kind of, that little fight that sometimes comes out of me. And I'm like, okay, so that's the expectation, you know, and determined like, no, I have goals and I have interests, and I just need to find someone to help me do that. Because again, my mother, very street smart, very capable woman, but she was statistically that story. She didn't finish high school. You know, she had my older sister when she was a teenager. And so all of those kind of things intersected at that time. And I was like, well, I know what I want to do. I'm in the right place to do it, you know, and now I know that the odds are such that people are expecting me from, you know, not to do it. And I think that even in that point in time, I don't remember clearly saying like, God, like this is what I want to do, but I clearly understand that God pressed that, you know, that will and that kind of fight and that fire. Like I know that God positioned that in such a way that I was going to act on it, right? He knows every part of my being, and he formed me in such a way. And boy, do I love a challenge, right? So I got very involved in Reach in my high school, and they were very intentional about helping to not only ensure that academically I did well, which I did. I really did well academically. I was in the top 10 of my graduating high school class. But again, they were really in tune with the fact that, you know, brown and black students don't always get the same opportunities. And so they invested in me in that time. And I was like, this is what I want to do. I want to go in healthcare, but I wasn't quite sure what that looked like. I was like, I want to be a doctor, right? Like that was it. I was like, let's go, let's do this. And so I want to say junior year into kind of all that summer preparation that goes into starting to select schools and all of that, I had the opportunity to do a summer internship for UMass where I was able to shadow doctors. And in that experience, I realized I didn't want to be a doctor. I wanted to be more than just the person that came in and said, you know, a brief kind of, this is what's going on with you, and this person will take care of you. And that person that was taking care of them was the nurse. And so that's where it became very clear to me. I was like, no, I don't want to be a doctor. Like, I'm not necessarily impressed by that level of achievement. I want to be front and center. I want to experience that level of engagement with someone when they're in a vulnerable place, whether that's, you know, beginning of life or end of life and everything in between. And I set forth very clearly with that goal. I knew it was healthcare and I knew it was nursing. What I didn't know was how competitive it was to get into nursing programs. And I didn't know the struggle that I was going to have, even being such a capable, like, academically well-versed student, having all of kind of the encouragement, having the support of the Reach program. And my mom, who was always, even to this day, she's like, you can do it, you're smart. And sometimes I wanted to be like, it's not about being smart. Like, I need an example. I need someone to like give me a little bit more than that, right? I needed some of that, and I didn't always have it. And it makes me emotional to think about it because I had great cheerleaders, but really to look to someone and say like, ooh, who do I draw from? And that wasn't, in that time, it wasn't present, right? I didn't have someone to look to and say, they did it, so I can. And there's something about them that reminds me of me, and so it gives me hope, right? And upon finishing my high school career, I had the opportunity to go straight into the field and start working as like a certified nursing assistant, and then would kind of follow that path, which was very common and is still common to this day in the way nurses can achieve licensure and go on in practice. And so I sat down with my counselor in the Reach program, and he sat down with me and he's like, I know that you might be considering this, because again, it was more of the path taken. It was what I knew. You just you finish and you get out and you work, and that's what you do. And going to college wasn't as common, you know. And so, you know, he sat down with me and he said, okay, well, you know, this is what it looks like. You get right out of high school, you start working, and this is what your money's going to look like. And I was like, oh, that looks good, you know, considering that, you know, I didn't necessarily come from the means, right? And then he's like, but he's like, if you go on and pursue, you know, a college experience, this is over the long term what your kind of income is going to look like. This is what your achievement mark is going to look like. And so I was just like, oh, well, that makes complete sense, right? You know, it was good money up front, but by the end of my 4 years, I was making potentially twice as much as I would have been, even with those years of experience in between of just going straight into the workforce. And so I was like, all right, I'm going to do it. I'm going to apply. Well, my Reach school was Northeastern. So I remember I applied directly to the College of Health Sciences, and I got a rejection letter. So my world was immediately devastated. And I was like, well, I guess I'm going to work. I'm going to one of my safety schools, which wasn't a bad choice either, but it wasn't what I was kind of pressed on. And so then I subsequently got a letter that said, you can come in for general studies if you again, I graduated top 10 in my high school class, which was like 1,000 students, you know, my senior class. But still academically, I wasn't in par comparatively to the students that were going into the College of Health Sciences. Yep. So I was like, man. So subsequently, after kind of being disappointed and waiting, I get another letter. And the letter says, you can come in for general studies, get your grades to where they need to be, get kind of some of the prerequisites that you still don't have, and then we'll see if you can get in. If not, then that's kind of done, right? You either find a new career path or you're done at this school. And I'm like, no pressure, right? But I thank God because, again, I've seen how his hand moves in all of those experiences, and how, again, he positioned me that even in those moments where I felt discouragement, he again positioned me and he said, all right, I'm going to give you the opportunity. Are you going to now push yourself and step into it? And so here I am, 12 years post my Northeastern experience. I actually just completed my master's.
Congratulations.
Thank you, in public health nursing, which I was just like, bachelor's is enough. Like I broke the mold, I broke the ceiling, you know, I surpassed the generation before me, right? I did what I needed to do. And as I've gone throughout this process, the big kind of motivator for me, again, those initial thoughts that I had in my teen years, I wanted to help people. I wanted to be in a position where I could reach the less reached, where I could really implement change. And throughout the course of my experience, I've realized that the only way I'm going to gain access to some of those points, you know, is either if God himself says, here you go, which I believe he will do that, but I also had to do some of the work. And so, you know, once I realized the relationship between my education and tables that I wouldn't necessarily be welcome to, but people would have to give me access to, it made sense to go and pursue my master's degree. Yeah. And so the long kind of run to answer your question is, I would love to see myself doing global healthcare. I would love to be impacting systems of care for, you know, communities that are in need in other countries, and look to a country like ours who seemingly would have all the resources and access, and yet we don't always, understanding that fractured system, right? And trying to figure out, how do I do the work here, which is needed, but how do I expand and reach outside of this country, right? Yeah. And so I think that in an ideal world, in my mind, if I'm doing what God called me to do, is just that, is to serve people in their most kind of vulnerable states of wellness or sickness. And that can be emotional, it can be physical, it can be mental. And so here I am.
I love that. Stephanie, thank you so much for sharing that. I think it's fascinating to hear people's journeys, because I think sometimes we get the picture of people just kind of arrive somewhere. And so seeing kind of the behind the scenes, the steps, the works, the efforts, the difference that it makes when someone shows you that there's another way, you know?
Absolutely.
That's the field that I work in. I do college access, so helping students figure out. And I think for me, the biggest thing is when I see the light turn on, like the possibility of like, oh wait, I don't have to do this thing that's expected of me. I don't have to go what the easiest route is. I can push myself. There's another space, another opportunity. And I think, you know, I think that there are multiple ways to, you know, achieve your dream, to be successful. I don't necessarily think that college is actually for everyone,
Absolutely.
even though I do this field.
Absolutely.
I think it doesn't always make sense depending on what your career goals are, right?
Absolutely.
But the fact that some people don't even know about the opportunities, and it could be perfect for them. It could be the thing that sets off the catalyst, that is where you meet your connections. It's where you get these incredible internships. It's where you just meet with people who are trying to do the same thing that you're doing, is so helpful. So shout out to Reach also for being there even then. And I know that you're going to have an incredible impact moving forward as well. I love getting recommendations from folks. So like something you might be listening to or reading or watching, if you want to give me like one or two recommendations.
Sure. So when I started the journal that I had referenced, I think a little bit earlier when we were speaking, prior to a little bit before the new year, part of starting that was because, again, I wanted to kind of enter into, for my own personal level of wellness, and I believe a lot in like holistic care and looking at the whole person, right? And that health isn't just limited to like physical health. Like that's a big part of it, but there are so many other things that can impact that. And so I started to write in this journal with kind of the purpose to target several aspects of like my life, like my physical health, because I was so focused in school and kind of stepped out of doing some of the things that I was doing. And so I gained some weight and I needed to work on that. My emotional kind of wellness, I've experienced a lot of transition in even the last 5 years of my life personally. And those transitions continue, and I'm really trying to adapt, and my family is trying to adapt to what that looks like. And then just spiritually, again, recognizing like, all right, how do I, like I said, get myself to a place where I can kind of stand on my own 2 feet spiritually, so that, again, my spiritual walk isn't necessarily contingent on the person leading in front. Again, if they're ebbing and flowing, because let's be honest, they're human just like us, that I'm not necessarily spiking with them. That if I'm spiking, it's because something in me needs to be worked on. And so I approached this and I said, God, I just want to be intentional, mental, physical, spiritual, emotional, all of that. And that's the level of intentionality that I also want to have in my work in the long run. I don't know how that's going to come together. But so I started to journal. So I love my little journal. It probably doesn't look as pretty as yours. It has like notes everywhere.
That's great.
But it's a good reminder, and it says, with God, all things are possible. So again, having those reminders and really looking at that. And then I picked up a book by Miguel Ruiz Jr., and it's called Living a Life of Awareness. And I'm not a person that is really in tune with like meditation, like even in prayer, which some people might feel like those are two different things, but silencing my voice and really allowing the Spirit of God to speak, that's something that I struggle with. And sometimes I'm like, God, I can't hear you. And it's probably because I don't stop speaking, right? And that might have to be with the way I was taught prayer. And so there's some exploration in that. But I love this because it's like a daily kind of, reflection. And it's like, the reflection today might be, accepting yourself as you are, and kind of really talking about that. And then really saying, all right, let's practice it, right? Let's step into that level of awareness.
Stephanie, thank you so much for everything that you've shared with us. I know that it's definitely going to be speaking to some people who are watching here. If somebody wanted to just get in contact with you, send you a quick note, ask you questions maybe about your journey, how could they get in contact with you?
Sure. They can reach out through Facebook if that's a platform that they utilize. It's just Steph PA. That's how I'm listed on there. And if they're connected through SWOG, they can find me as a member there. Or you can contact me via email, and it's Picon, Picon _ Stephanie@hotmail.com. And you can add that to the link, Maxine, and they're welcome to email me as well if it's about nursing or just kind of this spiritual walk in any capacity. I'd be more than happy to connect.
Awesome. And we will throw those links down there and on the video as well. Stephanie, thank you so much again for just being willing to share your story and your journey with us. Everyone, thank you for tuning in. Don't forget to hit subscribe and follow us on Instagram at strongwomen_of_God. Until next time, take care.
Bye.